In this video, I'm going to show you 3 more of my obscure favorite warbands that I've painted and show you where you can get your own. Warbands, like the small little groups of models, not like a big army, are one of my favorite things to paint. I love painting terrain as well. That's actually my number 1 favorite thing to paint. There's something very soothing and meditative to me about painting stone structures or statues or sci-fi buildings. I don't exactly know why, but I think it's because you don't have to focus on details quite as much as you do with normal 28mm scale miniatures. I don't really enjoy painting big monsters or vehicles nearly as much, but my painting happy place is terrain first, and then small warbands of figures is a super close second. A few months back, I made a video about 3 warbands that I had painted and enjoyed, and I decided to share them with you, the audience. You can find that initial video here. Pachow. And I said, that if it did well, I'd do another video like it in the future. Well, it didn't do great. It did okay. I've had worse views. But sometimes you just got to make the content that you'd like to see out in the world, even if it doesn't light the algorithm up and get the big numbers. I could make a crazy thumbnail and title for it and all that kind of stuff, I suppose, but I probably won't. This first warband was a bit of a mystery to me. Honestly, I could not remember initially when I was starting to go through and pick these warbands where I had gotten them. They're a cool mix of sci-fi and post-apocalyptic, but I could not remember where they came from when I decided to put them in this video, right? Getting old is hard. I decided to be smart and use technology to solve all my problems, so I used the Google app to shoot an image of the models and then use AI to tell me what they were. And like all AI, it was wrong, but resolute. It kept telling me that they were Ogrins from the popular war game called Warhammer 40,000. Eventually, a flicker of memory sparked in my old brain, and I remembered taking a photo of the models in kind of a desert scene for a thumbnail in one of my videos at some point. And if I showed some models in a video, then someone asked me in the comments where they were from. That's just how it works. I scrolled back through years of videos until I found the thumbnail that I was looking for. It was the Why I Like It video about space weirdos back in March of 2022. Pachow. I checked the comments and bingo, somebody had asked, and younger me still knew the answer. Back then, they were stalkers from a company called Puppets War. Anyway, they're really nice models. They're not metal, they're not 3D printed, but they're what you call poured resin. Sometimes it's spin casted, but whatever. I don't think that they're available as STL files. At least I couldn't find the files on the Puppets War website. However, they do also look hand sculpted. And since the images on the website of the models seem to be actual photos and not 3D renders, then I suspect I might be right. They're hand sculpted. They have a really interesting character to them. If I'm honest, I'm not usually into hand sculpted minis. Usually I prefer the kind of cleaner look to computer sculpted figures, but these just spoke to me. You'll notice that they're generally in my kind of normal color palette, warm colors and true metallics. It does seem to be my happy place. Browns, tans, a little bit of gray, some silver metallic, and then, the red face masks. They're pretty raggedy, and they look like scavengers out in the wasteland, but their sci-fi looking guns show that, we're somewhere in a futuristic sci-fi apocalypse instead of an Australian Mad Max style apocalypse, right? That said, they do have some kind of cohesion to their overall look. They all have the same guns and then the same boots and the same face masks. This leads me to think, in my headcanon, that they all used to be in the same kind of sci-fi military force, and then the apocalypse happened, as they do, and they've been surviving ever since. Now, sure, they've gone a bit feral, we all will in the apocalypse, but at least they all have, matching hoods and face masks. The shoulder pads have a lot of variation, so my assumption is that they have added those parts to their loadouts as the apocalypse has progressed. Or perhaps they just found an abandoned armory and ended up with some matching kit. Whatever their backstory is, they're perfect models for space weirdos, at least as far as 2022 me was concerned. But they'll also work great for Grimdark Future Firefight, Planet 28, Wanted Rewards, CC 10,000, and even Space Station Zero from, me and Vince. There's a part of me that wants to get like another set of them and then paint them differently. Kind of to like push myself, but also to make them more apocalyptic looking and less kind of matchy-matchy, right? Like the guns would still probably all be the same, guns or whatever, and probably the same color, but I could tweak the other colors on their clothes and maybe even clip a few heads off because they're all solid, single piece models. But I could clip a few heads off and then replace them with different kinds of heads. Now, these guys will be familiar to you if you've ever, paid attention to the intro to my videos for like the last several years. The red-robed cultists fighting off the military zombies, those cultists are from Anvil Industry from the UK. I've bought many resin minis from them over the years, and now they're, leaning into the digital market as well with tons of STLs for you to check out. The Regiment's Robed Cultist Squad on their website currently doesn't really seem to match up perfectly with the models that I have. On mine, like the robes seem longer. They go closer down to the ground, but my models are probably on there somewhere. That's one of the great things about Anvil Industry. They have so much to choose from, especially now that they're working, more in the STL world. I'm pretty sure that most of the sculpts on the website, even the older like poured resin models, were all digitally sculpted initially anyways, right? Like they're all very clean and modular and they fit together perfectly, but now that they can also offer STL files for sale, for the 3D printing world and not have to worry as much about making like molds and keeping specific models in stock and warehousing and all that kind of stuff, they can take more chances and make all kinds of like really interesting stuff without worrying as much about how much of a return on investment will be required. Anyway, these cultists aren't digitally printed, they're poured resin from rubber molds. They were like near perfect and had almost no mold lines, like most of the resin that I've bought from Anvil Industry over the years. It'd be really cool if Games Workshop could figure that out, someday. Fingers crossed. I originally bought them for Zona Alpha, a game from Osprey Games, as you can have kind of like religious zealots as a faction in that game. And then because of that, and it being a modern style game, I got them with like included modern style guns, kind of AK-47s, SMGs, and stuff like that. I'm thinking about getting some more of these models, but getting them with like maybe sci-fi guns instead. One of the great things about these models and many, many of the models from Anvil Industry is that they're very modular and you can order them with different heads or arms or weapons or whatever, and the parts will always fit together. If you go to the squad builder on their website, you can start with bodies, pick, the bodies that you want, and then they'll show you all the heads that will work with the bodies, all the arms that will work with the bodies, and all the guns that will work with the arms. With these cultists, you have choices from like World War II Bren guns all the way to like phase rifles and retro future ray guns if you want. I painted mine a deep red, as is my way, and stuck with like very simple silver dry brushing on the black guns, right? Like the AKs needed a little bit of wood here and there, and there was a gun strap on the SMG, and they all had like wrist straps and boots and things like that, but mostly we were dealing with red here. Some skin tones, some gas masks, and stuff painted up very, very quickly, just like I like. A little bit of like dust color dry brushed onto the lower parts of their robes really helps to tie them to the environment of their bases. And you have some assault rifle toting zealots who are here to tell you about their Lord and Savior, Cthulhu or Dagon or Carrot Top or whatever. This last group is the only group of 3D printed miniatures in this video, but they're also the most recently painted. They're from a sculptor on my mini factory called Papsicles Miniatures, and the group is from a line of their minis called Trauma Troop. They have a very kind of sci-fi sort of kind of cyberpunk sort of feel. I was immediately drawn to them because I really love cyberpunk stuff these days, and I knew that they'd be really quick to paint up. I love painting like military-style soldier models because most of their stuff is kind of the same color. Yet for some reason, I'm not into historicals. Weird. I primed them black like I always do. Then I sprayed a zenithal of like a dark gray from my airbrush to help give them more detail and like shading in the parts where the gray doesn't get, and to kind of just make their fatigues pretty much kind of monocolor. Most modern military uniforms, at least the ones that I know, are all pretty much variations of the same color depending on where the theater of war is. These guys are definitely kitted out for urban fighting in my mind, so dark gray seemed to be the way to go. They remind me a bit of blackout figures, and my blackout forces are all painted kind of in a similar way, like one dominant color for the most part, right? Let me know in the comments down below if you'd like to see a video like this one, but about my 4 currently finished blackout forces. After the airbrush part was done, which was really quick, then I dry brushed a slightly lighter gray onto the entirety of the models to pop the raised details, and then I used black wash and some black speed paint on a few parts to sort of make them considerably darker, like the backpacks and the knee pads and the guns and the boots and stuff like that. I painted the grenades red on the guys who actually had grenades, and then it was time to do the visors. They all have these like cool domed sci-fi visor helmets, which probably have all kinds of, sensors and heads-up displays and all that kind of stuff. And they don't have, dumb, angry faces on them at all. These domes needed to be metallic. If you're trying to keep your soldiers camouflaged and stealthy, why give them a big shiny head? You might ask. Which I get, but it's called the rule of cool. Big shiny helmets just look more imposing on these guys. Also, my assumption is that like when they really, really, really need to be like stealthy, they can like push a button on their wrist or something like that like blacks out their helmets so they don't reflect light, or some other kind of cool sci-fi shenanigans. I used a color of metallic speed paint from the Army Painter called Enchanted Steel for the visors. It's a neat kind of dark, slightly bluish silver metallic that worked really, really well on these guys. These models are kind of big. They're certainly every bit of like 32 millimeter scale. It doesn't really bother me. Like, scale is pretty relative. Pachow. And sometimes people are just tall or short. It happens. My assumption is either that these soldiers are like slightly genetically enhanced to be bigger and more powerful, or they're predominantly from Wisconsin or Minnesota and grew up with like a lot of dairy and Norwegian ancestors. I could have had my friend Dave from Bottle and Spool, link in the description, print them like a little bit smaller, but I like how these guys turned out. They're big and imposing with shiny heads. So there's 3 more warbands of mine that I've shown you and told you stuff about. A show and tell video, if you will. Hopefully you enjoyed me rambling on a little bit about all the weird little guys that I like to paint. If I do another one of these, maybe it'll be, like I said, my 4 painted blackout forces. Or maybe I should do, like, some fantasy warbands. Let me know what you'd like to see, and anything else, honestly, down in the comments below. If you liked this video, some depressmentation of the like button or the hype button on mobile is always appreciated because it really actually does help. If you'd like to see more videos like this every single Friday while you're down there clicking buttons, there's one that says subscribe on it, and you could hit that one. It's free. Thanks for watching. Coming up in mid-June, come visit your Uncle Adam and play all kinds of demos and miniatures games. Take some classes from some of the world's best painters, and just have fun at a little wargaming expo in central Wisconsin. It's the Tabletop Minions Expo, June 13th and 14th, 2026 in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. It's a small event with game demos, some painting classes, some vendors, and some fun. If you run some games as a game master, then your attendance is free. All the info you need is at www.tabletopminions.org/tmx. Link in the description below. Hope to see you there.